Welcome, y'all. So, welcome to our sixth grade study guide. Here on question one, this says, Elena said if you want to divide 4 by 2/5, I can multiply 4 by 5 and then divide by 2, or multiply by 1/2. Why do they say that? Is because dividing by 2 is equivalent to multiplying by 1/2. But let's get started on this. So, what they're saying here is 4 divided by 2/5 is the same as multiplying by the reciprocal. So we do 4 times the reciprocal of 2/5, which just means you flip it. And so you do 4 over 1. 4 times 5, right? That's our first part here. 4 times 5 is 20. And then we do 20 over 2. And so you multiply by 5, and then we're going to divide by 2. Or in your head, you can say I'm multiplying by 1/2, and you end up getting 10. And so when we bring that over to these problems, we're still applying that principle where when you divide fractions, you need to multiply, right? We multiply by the reciprocal. And so here we're going to do 3/4 divided by 1/8. We want to, right? And the strategy to multiplying by the reciprocal, if you need a strat for that, is keep, change, flip. So we keep our dividend, and our dividend is 3/4. We change from division to multiplication, and then we take the reciprocal of 1/8, aka we flip it to get it as 8 over 1. And then you do multiplying across 3 times 8 is going to give us 24. 4 times 1 is 4. And then 24 divided by 4 gives us 6. And again, if you guys wanted to, you could have cross simplified here. We know that 4 and 8 can be cross simplified, and this 4 can become a 1, the 8 can become a 2 to get quicker to 6. Now, for our next one here, we have, again, the same concept, right? We're going to multiply by the reciprocal. So I keep my dividend, and now I multiply by the reciprocal. So I change from division to multiplication. And now I take the reciprocal of 3/5, which is just 5 over 3. And so now I can just multiply across. 9 times 5 is 45. 10 times 3 is 10 times 3 is 30. Right, before I get it as a mixed number, I can simplify this, right, because this is an improper fraction. Ends in a 5 or a 0, which means both of these numbers are divisible by 5. 45 divided by 5 is 9. 30 divided by 5 is 6. And so, again, these can also be divisible by 3, so I divide by 3. 9 divided by 3, 6 divided by 3. And so what we're doing here is we're simplifying this down. And so 9 divided by 3 is 3. 6 divided by 3 is 2. And so now I need to get 3 over 2 as a mixed number. And so if we can't do that in the head, we have this strategy here where 3 is our dividend and 2 is our divisor. And so I would set this up as 2 goes into 3 one time. 1 times 2 is 2. I then subtract. And so we end up getting our whole number, our numerator, and then our divisor is always our denominator. And so our whole number is 1. Our numerator is our remainder, so 1. And our divisor is 2. So that means our answer for this one is 1 and 1/2. All right, so now let's go on to our next one. And so now we're moving on to part 2, question 2, where it says, after biking 5.5 miles, Jada has traveled 2/3 of the length of her trip. How long in miles is the entire length of her trip? Write an equation to represent the situation, and then find your answer. And so this part is saying write an equation. That is your dividend divided by your divisor, and your answer to that is called your quotient. And what we remember is your dividend is always your total, where your divisor is either going to be the number of groups or how much goes in each group. And so here he says, after biking 5.5 miles, Jada has traveled 2/3 the length of her trip. And so this is our starting point. That represents 2/3. And so what we need to do is we need to do our dividend. So that's our total currently biked. And the portion of our trip is our divisor. And so if I was to write this as multiplication, right, this would be 5 1/2. I lied. This would be 2/3 times the total amount of our trip is equal to how much we traveled. And so to rewrite this as division, we do our dividend 5 1/2 divided by 2/3. And so that means to reverse this, right, I need to bring the 2/3 over here, and it's 5 1/2 divided by 2/3. And now all we're doing is dividing fractions. And so to start this off, we see we have a mixed number. In order to divide fractions, I need to multiply by the reciprocal, but this mixed number needs to be an improper fraction. So I do around the world. And so I do my denominator, 2, times my whole number, 5. So 2 times 5 gives us 10. So 2 times 5 gives us 10. And then I add 10 to my numerator. And so 2 times 5 is 10. And then I do 10 plus 1, which is 11. And so I rewrite my mixed number as 11 over 2. Notice how I didn't change my denominator. When you're going from mixed number to improper fraction, your denominator never changes. And so now I'm dividing by 2/3. And so now I can multiply by the reciprocal. So again, I do keep, change, flip if you need that strategy. So I keep my 11 over 2, I keep my dividend, I change from division to multiplication, and then I take the reciprocal of 2/3, which is 3 over 2, and I end up getting 33 over 4. And just like before, I want to challenge myself and get this as a mixed number. And so you can't do this in your head yet. What you can do is do your long division, right? So 33 is our dividend, 4 is our divisor. So to do this in your head, you'd say 4 goes into 33 how many times? 4 goes into 33 how many times? So 4 goes into 33 8 times. 8 times 4 is 32. 33 minus 32 is 1. And so again, just like what we did up here, we have our whole number 8, our numerator 1, and our denominator 4. And so a really good sentence frame is going to use this last sentence. How long in miles is the entire length of her trip? Well, that statement right there gives us what 8 1/4 means, right? We would say she biked 8 1/4 miles. And we don't stop there. We explain our reasoning. I know this because 5 1/2 divided by 2/3 can be multiplied by the reciprocal to get 33 over 4, which can be converted. So converted means to go from improper fraction to mixed number to 8 1/4 miles. Bam. Instead of converted, you could also say which is equivalent to 8 1/4 miles. All right, let's go to question 3. All right, so for question 3, it's really just having us see, do we understand when a word problem is asking us for division? And so here it says there are 3 problems, select all of them, select all problems that can be used to solve division. So here it says Jada cut 4 pieces of ribbon that were equal in length. She used a total of 5 feet of ribbon. How long in feet was each piece of ribbon she cut? So she had 5 feet of ribbon, and then she cut 4 of them equally. And so that tells us that this is our dividend, and that this is our divisor. And so actually, this is one of our answers. Here it says a chef bought 3 bags of bean. Each bag of bean contains 1 2/5 kilograms of beans. How many kilograms of beans did she buy? And so she has 3 bags with the same amount in each bag. And so this would be something like this, right? but in each bag it's just 1 2/5. And this is actually just multiplication. So this would be 3 times 1 2/5 to get our total. And so we know that this one's actually multiplication. It's not division. So going to our third one, a printer takes 2 1/2 seconds to print a flyer. It took 75 seconds to print a batch of flyers without stopping. How many flyers were in each batch? And so here we have how much goes in each group, right? It takes 2 1/2 seconds. So this would be our divisor. And it took a total, so that's our dividend, of 75 seconds. And so this would be 75 divided by 2 1/2. And so this is another division 1. And now going to question 4, we have Andre poured 1 2/3 ounces of rice into each container. If all containers have 10 ounces of rice, how many containers are used? And so here we have if all containers have 10 ounces of rice, this is going to be the total amount, right? Because all the containers have 10 ounces of rice in total. So that's our dividend. And then he poured 1 2/3 ounces in each container. That's how much is going into each group. And so this means that that is going to be our divisor. And so our division equation is still our dividend divided by our divisor is equal to our quotient. And so we end up getting 10 as our dividend divided by our divisor of 1 2/3 is equal to some amount. And so now if we wanted that as multiplication, right, it's going to be your factor times your factor is equal to your product. And so our factor here, right, is 1 2/3. So 1 2/3 times some number is going to give us the total 10 ounces. Why? Because there's some amount of containers, and in those containers contains 1 2/3 ounces. And so we would set it up as 1 2/3. Oh, I lied. We want to use our division 1 here. 10 divided by 1 2/3 is equal to some number. And again, just like before, when we have a mixed number, we need it as an improper fraction. So I do around the world. And so I do 10 divided by 3 times 1 is 3. 3 plus 2 is 5. So 1 2/3 comes to be 5 over 3. Notice how I didn't change the denominator. The denominator still stayed 3. And so now I multiply by the reciprocal. So I keep my 10, change from division to multiplication, and take the reciprocal of 5 over 3. And now I just multiply across. 10 times 3 is 30. 1 times 5 is 5. And so this means each container has 6 ounces of rice. I know this because 10 divided by 1 2/3 can be multiplied by the reciprocal to get 6. Bam. All right, let's move on to the next one. All right, so for question 5 here, we have to divide a number n by fraction ab. We multiply n by, and right, so it's multiplying by the reciprocal, so we can multiply n. N means any number. We want to multiply it by our b because we're actually going to multiply by the reciprocal. And then divide the product by a. And so what this is saying is if I have n divided by a over b, what I need to do is multiply this number by the reciprocal, which the reciprocal of a over b is b over a. And so if I look over here, what we have here is all of these say n divided by a over b. And what we can see here is that we actually are multiplying by our reciprocal on this bottom one. Bam. Which here, all we did was change from division to multiplication. We didn't actually take the reciprocal. So we know that this one's not the case. And so that leaves us with one of these two. And so one of these two is going to match our sentence up here, where n divided by a over b, right? We want to multiply n by b and then divide by a. And so we know our first one is the case because we don't want to multiply by a because that means we didn't take the reciprocal. Bam. And so as we go down here, I'm just going to set up problem number 6 for you, and I'm going to give you the answer to see when you guys are doing this at home, right? Can you end up doing this on your own to get your answer? So here we remember that the base and the height form a perpendicular line. Perpendicular lines form 90-degree angles, which is why there's a 90-degree angle here. So this means our area is our base, which is 4 1/2, times our height, which is 4 1/2, right? So our area, a triangle is half of a parallelogram, so it's 1/2 times 4 1/2 times 4 1/2. And so when you end up solving this out, right, you're going to need to convert these into mixed numbers. And so this would be 1/2 times, right, you do around the world, 2 times 4 is 8, plus 1 is 9, 9 over 2. This is going to be the same fraction, so it's still 9 over 2. And so when you end up solving these out and showing your work, right, how you know if you got the right answer is going to be if you end up getting right. Actually, we'll just do it out. So 1 times 9 is 9, 2 times 2 times 2 is 4. Bring down our 9 over 2. 9 times 9 gives us 81. 4 times 2 is going to give us 8. And so now we do around the world. Now we do get this as a mixed number. 8 goes into 8 one time. And so we end up getting 8 minus 8 is 0. Bring down our 1. 8 goes into 1 0 times. Bam. And so we end up getting 10 and 1/8. How you do this in your head, 8 goes into 81 10 times. 10 times 8 is 80, so 81 minus 80 gives us 1. And so that is going to be our area. And now on the back page here, we have volume using fractions. So a rectangular pan is 8.5 inches by 11 inches by 2 inches. So this is length times width times height in order to get our volume. And so what is the volume of the pan? So volume is length times width times height. And so we would end up getting 8 1/2 times 11 times 2. So if I solve this, our volume, 11 times 2 is 22. Bring down our 8 1/2. And so now we can do around the world. 2 times 8 is 16, plus 1 is 17. So 17 over 2 times 22. And so I put 22 over 1. So on the side, I can do 17 times 22. 2 times 7 is 14. Regroup our 1. 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3. So cross that out. I'm moving from the ones place to the tens place. So I add a placeholder. 2 times 7 is 14. Regroup our 1. 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3. So we end up getting 374. And so this becomes 374 over 2. But again, we want our volume as a mixed number. And so I can do 374 divided by 2. 2 goes into 3 one time. And we're just doing our long division at this point. 2 goes into 17 8 times. Carry down our 4. 2 goes into 14 7 times. And so this means our volume is 187 inches cubed. And then you would explain your reasoning, right? You'd want to say the rectangular, right? I'm using this rectangular pan has a volume of 187 inches cubed. I know this because, and then explain your reasoning. So here it says if Prince fills 3/4 of the pan with batter, how much of the pan would be filled? And so 3/4 of, right, means multiplication. And so I needed to take the volume, right? The volume is 187 inches cubed, and we're finding 3/4 of that. So this becomes 187 times 3/4 over 1. And so I set this up, 187 times 3. 3 times 7 is 21. Regroup R2. 3 times 8 is 24. Plus 2 is 26. Regroup R2. 3 times 1 is 3. Plus 2 is 5. So we end up getting 561 over 4. And now we want this as a mixed number. So I can set up the long division. 4 goes into 5 one time. 1 times 4 is 4. Carry down our 16. 4 goes into 16 4 times. Bam. Carry down our 1. 4 goes into 1 0 times. And so we end up getting a mixed number of 140 and 1/4. And so we would say Prince filled 140 and 1/4 inches of the pan. And then you would say, I know this because, and then explain your reasoning. And so we're going to go on to the back now. 7, we're just doing a bunch of arithmetic final practice to close this out. And so here, remember when we're dividing with fractions, we always want to multiply by the reciprocal. So this is just 8 over 9 times the reciprocal of 4. Well, a lot of students struggle understanding sometimes what the reciprocal of 4 is. And so remember, you can put 4 over 1. And so that means the reciprocal of 4 means I can flip that to make it 1/4. And so this becomes 8 times 1 is 8. 9 times 4 is 36. I can then simplify this, right? So I divide by 2, divide by 2. 8 divided by 2 is 4. 36 divided by 2 ends up being 18. I can divide by 2 again because they're both even, right? If they're even numbers, they're divisible by 2. And so we end up getting 4 divided by 2 is 2. 18 divided by 2 is 9. We end up getting 2 9ths. All right, well, let's go to the second one. So here I keep my dividend of 3/4. I change from multiplication. I change from division to multiplication. And then I take the reciprocal of 1/2, which is just 2. So 2 over 1. And then multiply across, right? So multiplying by the reciprocal, 3 times 2 is 6. 4 times 1 is 4. And so now what I can do is convert this into a mixed number. 4 goes into 6 one time. And we end up with a remainder of 2. And so this ends up becoming 1 and 2/4. And again, we can simplify this by dividing by 2 to end up getting 1 and 1/2. Bam. So now we go to the third one. This time, though, we have a mixed number. So 1 and 1/3 divided by 2 9ths. I need to convert my mixed number to an improper fraction. And so I do around the world. 3 times 1 is 3, plus 1 is 4. So this is 4 over 3 divided by 2 9ths, which now I can multiply by the reciprocal. So 4 over 3 times 9 over 2. 4 times 9 gives us 36. 3 times 2 is 6. So 36 divided by 6 ends up just giving us 6. And again, here's another fraction that's kind of straightforward where we do multiplying by the reciprocal. So I keep the dividend and then I multiply by the reciprocal. The reciprocal of 3/8 is just 8 over 3. 9 times 8, again, 72. 2 times 3 is 6. And again, if you can't do this in your head, that's okay. You can do it on the side. 6 goes into 7 one time. 1 times 6 is 6. 7 minus 6 is 1. Bring down our 2. 6 goes into 12 two times. And so this means our answer is just 12. And then finally, on our last one of the study guide, right, we have another mixed number. We need to do around the world first. So 5 times 6 is 30. Plus 2 is 32. So this becomes 32 over 5 divided by 3, which we multiply by the reciprocal. So 32 over 5 times the reciprocal of 3, which is 1/3. Now, the reason why it's 1/3 is because you can put 3 over 1, and then when you flip it, it's 1/3. So we multiply across 32. 32 times 1 is 32. 5 times 3 is 15. And so again, we end up getting 32 over 15, but we need to get that as a mixed number. And so we do 32 divided by 15. 15 goes into 32 two times. And so 32 minus 30 is 2. So this means as a mixed number, our answer is 2 into 15ths. And that was our study guide, y'all.